See website for details. Bills Happen is not a lender and does not make credit decisions. Must be 18 years old. Not available in all states.
Honey, the credit card bill came and we're maxed out.
Great. Maxed out cards, rent is due, bills are piling up. We just need some extra cash to help us get by for a few weeks.
We should do what my brother did. He went to billshappen.com and got $3,000 the next day.
With our bad credit, I don't think so.
Billshappen.com is different. They are one of the largest personal loan networks. They can help people with all credit types get up to $5,000.
I'm sure there's a lot of paperwork.
Nope, my brother said it was easy. He did it right from his phone.
If you have a regular source of income, you can be approved for a loan for up to $5,000 in minutes, and your cash can hit your bank account the next day. Billshappen.com's lenders have millions of dollars to lend, regardless of your credit history.
Great news! I went to billshappen.com, and we will have our money as soon as tomorrow.
Wow, that is fast.
If you need extra cash, go to billshappen.com. That's billshappen.com. Billshappen.com.
Hi, everyone. Al Roker here. As a guy with his own catchphrase, I appreciate that after 75 years, Smokey's only said,
"Only you can prevent wildfires."
But I'm filling in because there's a lot more to report. Like when it's dry or windy. Be careful burning yard waste, because wildfires can even start in your neck of the woods. Go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. I hope you guys are having just the best day possible. That's my hope. I know I am. Revved up, ready to go. Got just a great show for you today. Will Brinson, NFL writer for CBS Sports, he is set to join me at 11. He wrote an interesting article predicting 7 teams that made the playoffs last year that will not return to the playoffs this next year. He joins me at 11. We're going to discuss that. Should be a good time. And I would like to start off this show by telling all of the Chris Ballard haters out there that you owe him an apology. You do. I remember going back a few months, going back to the NFL draft. And after day one, Chris Ballard walks up to the podium. Everyone interested about what he's about to say about Laiatu Latu and how day one of the NFL draft went. And he was, of course, asked if he tried to trade up. And he said, yes, we made some big major offers. We were really making an attempt to move up in the draft. And some people didn't believe him, which I think is insane. I don't think he would just lie about something like that. And, I got a bunch of, no, he's a liar and all that kind of stuff, which is fine. And it came out last night on the Giants Hard Knocks that Chris Ballard did in fact make an attempt to move up for the 6th overall pick. And the offer that he gave was pretty nice. The Colts offered the number 15 pick in this year's draft, the number 46 pick in this year's draft, and a 2025 second round pick to move up to 6th overall with the Giants back in April's draft. And the general manager of the Giants was like, no, we don't want to move back that far. So if you didn't believe him, you owe him an apology, because that is quite the offer to move up for the number 6 overall pick. And look, I do think Chris Ballard's trying to make that big swing. Okay, he tried to trade up for the 6th overall pick in the draft where, maybe he would have drafted Malik Neighbors. I don't know. That dude's pretty explosive coming out of LSU, so maybe he would have offered, maybe they would have drafted him. Maybe it would have been Robo Dunze. Maybe it would have been Brock Bowers. So he made an attempt during the draft to make a big splash. Then in the offseason, he goes to the Chiefs and is like, hey, remember me? I used to work here. We would like to trade for L'Jarius Sneed. And L'Jarius Sneed was like, that's great. I'm going to go play for Tennessee instead. So he's making these attempts, and I just think that we as a fan base need to recognize that, because I think Colts fans are kind of hard on Chris Ballard, right? And so if you're going to be hard on him, I think it'd just be nice if we acknowledged when he did things the right way. So Chris Ballard, good job. Way to make an attempt. Just maybe come through next time. Now, this is just happy Chris Ballard day, I guess. Because the next sentence out of my mouth, I didn't think I'd be saying anytime soon, but praise the Lord for Chris Ballard and his offensive and defensive line philosophy. Seriously, I went back and I listened to an older episode of the Greenlight podcast hosted by Chris Long, where he interviewed Chris Ballard. This interview took place about a week and a half ago, 9 days ago, something like that. And during the interview, Chris Long asked Chris Ballard a great question. He's like, how do you build your teams? How important is size? How important is this? Great question. And here is what GM Chris Ballard had to say about building an NFL roster.
Yeah, I think it matters. It's a big man's game. And of course, there's going to be exceptions, that go on in play. We try to slant towards, more height, weight, and speed at each and every position. Now they got to have good tape. We're not just taking all height, weight, and speed guys, but they got to have good tape. But I do think it's a big man's game. I do think that those big men disrupt the game more, and especially third down. And look, I am front. It's just the way I've been trained in this league, both O-line and D-line, just very front driven. And I just believe as the season wears on, they're going to win games for you down the stretch. And those are the two positions, next to quarterback, O-line and D-line. Like when you start, if you don't have enough depth there, guys wear down. And even more, if you have injuries at the position, finding replacements is almost next to impossible. So you better load up on them in the offseason when you get a chance.
That was Colts general manager Chris Ballard talking about how he builds rosters. And what he said there at the end is so true, and we're already seeing it play out. He said you have to load up on big guys, offensive and defensive linemen, because when those guys get hurt, there are not many good replacements left out there. And he's right. When you look at the free agency market, there's never great defensive tackles or defensive ends or offensive tackles just like sitting around waiting to be picked up, unlike the safety position, which I know we're all still waiting on Chris Ballard to address. Justin Simmons just sitting out there, but hey, whatever. So he's right. And we're seeing this play out, and it is a good thing that he's building the team this way, because Samson Ebukam tore his Achilles earlier this week. Okay, yesterday was the first day that the Colts had media availability since it was announced that Samson Ebukam has been ruled out for the year with a torn Achilles. So a lot of the questions yesterday during yesterday's media time was about Ebukam, who's going to fill his shoes, and all those things. And in this clip that I'm about to play for you, Shane Steichen, Colts head coach, names 3 players specifically And I'm going to discuss all of them here in the coming minutes because I'm excited about all three of them. So take a listen to who Shane Steichen lists as guys that he wants to see kind of step up and fill in Samson Ebukam's absence.
Yeah, Kwity, Dayo, and Latu. I mean, it's time those guys need to step up. I mean, they're good players, and now obviously Latu coming in rookie year. Obviously, we like where he's at, and we got to keep repping that and go from there.
Samson, Kwity Paye, Dayo Odeyingbo, and Latu. Those are the three players that Shane Steichen lists when he is mentioning players that he wants to step up with Ebukam being out for the year. Okay? And so because he mentioned those three players, I took a lot of time last night, dove deep into the computer. I mean, just all over the place, finding stats, finding numbers, trying to figure out, are these guys good? Are these guys bad? All those different types of things. And as I deep dove and I began to peel back the layers, I'm excited for all three of these guys. Okay, before we get into these players, though, I want to start with the baseline. What are the Colts missing with Samson Ebukam being out this year? How good was he last year? Now, last year was a major outlier year for Samson Ebukam. It was hands down the best year of his career. 9.5 sacks. His previous career high before that was only 5 when he was playing in San Francisco. Okay, he led the Colts with 9.5 sacks. He only had 21 pressures, which is the second most in his career. He was productive off the edge in 17 starts. Obviously, he's not available this year. The Colts have to have someone to step up, and I think the Colts are going to be just fine without him. Because I think Kwity Paye is going to be good this year. I think Dayo Odeyingbo is going to be good this year, and so is Latu. I'm excited about all three of them. Once again, thank you, Chris Ballard, for having this philosophy of loading up on defensive and offensive linemen in the offseason, because when guys get hurt, there just aren't many guys available that can really make an impact. So let's start with Kwity Paye. I believe that Kwity Paye is going to have the best year of his career this year. Okay, now first and foremost, I know that there's some Colts fans that listen to this show that have been disappointed in what Kwity Paye has produced. You know, they're like, oh, he's a first-round pick. He was the 21st pick in the draft. Okay, like let's quit acting like he was selected 3rd overall like Joey Bosa in San Diego. Okay, like that's not who this guy is. And Kwity Paye, former 21st overall pick, he's coming off the best year of his career last year. Okay, we saw him set a career high in sacks with 8.5, which is a solid number. Okay, there were only 23 players in the NFL last year who had double-digit sacks. 8.5 sacks, that is a solid season of production. That is a good year from an edge rusher, especially playing for a team like the Colts that has a deep defensive line and consistently rotates defensive linemen in and out the way that the Indianapolis Colts do. Okay? The concerning stat, if you want to say, well, Jonathan, Kwity Paye wasn't that good last year, you would point to pressures, right? He only had 17 pressures in 16 games played. Now, a pressure is just anything that impacts the quarterback, so it's really any time you touch the quarterback. So that's sacks, that's quarterback knockdowns, and all those fun things. Okay, he only had 17 pressures last year, but he made them pay off with 8.5 sacks. He's a good run defender who doesn't miss tackles. He didn't miss a tackle last year. His missed tackle percentage was 0 last year in about 700 snaps played. Okay, we have seen a steady increase in production from Kwity Paye over literally every year of his career. Every year of his career, he has continued to get better. His sack and tackle numbers, they have increased every single year. And I believe that that's going to happen once again this year because of something important. There's this thing that Kwity Paye's up for that makes literally every player in the NFL play better. Kwity Paye is up for a contract extension. Players that are up for extensions and in the final year of their contracts always seem to play just a little bit harder. They do. Just, I know this is a different sport, but let's just take a look at Paul George. Okay, if you look over the course of Paul George's last 5-year contract, as we know, he was a free agent this offseason. The first 4 years of his contract with the Clippers, he misses I don't think he plays more than 60 games. Maybe he does it once or twice. And then this last year, the last year of his contract, where he's looking to get paid, looking for another 4 or 5 year deal worth a lot of money. Guess what? He played like 70 games. What a surprise, right? That's just the way that this works. When guys have an opportunity to make more money, usually their production goes up because their effort goes up as well. Okay, and Kwity Paye is going to be no exception to that. I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if he was a double-digit sack guy this year. He might have been last year if he hadn't missed a game. Okay, like the work that he's put in the offseason has been documented. Okay, he's lost like 7-8 pounds, which you would think would help him be a little bit quicker coming off the edge. So I think we're at a minimum going to get another good year from Kwity Paye because we got a good year from him last year. 8.5 sacks while rotating in and out. Literally didn't miss a tackle. Okay, and I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if he put together a great year. Okay, he's clearly put in the work during the offseason. He's playing for a contract extension, and he has shown consistent improvement during his career. I am excited to see what Kwity Paye looks like this season because I think he's going to look pretty good. The other player, the other edge rusher that's going to get some increased time on the field because of Ebukam's injury that Shane Steichen mentioned yesterday is Dayo Odeyingbo. Dayo Odeyingbo was better than Ebukam last year. He was. Dayo Odeyingbo is once again going to have another good year in his 4th year in the league because guess what? He had a good year last year. It's like Jonathan. He only had 8 sacks. Ebukam had 9.5. What do you mean Odeyingbo had a better year last year than Ebukam? You're right. Dayo Odeyingbo had 8 sacks last year, but he played 80 less snaps than Ebukam and Kwity Paye. He had more pressures than both of them and less time on the field as well. When Dayo Odeyingbo was on the field last year, he got after the quarterback. He did. The only Colts player that had more pressures than Dayo Odeyingbo last year was DeForest Buckner, who played almost 250 more snaps than he did. Okay, based on those numbers, when Dayo Odeyingbo was on the field, he was the Colts' best pass rusher last year in only his 3rd year. Okay, and look, young guys tend to get better year after year after year. Dayo Odeyingbo can flat out get after the quarterback. And with Samson Ebukam not playing this year, that should give Dayo Odeyingbo more opportunities to be on the field in passing situations. Okay, when Dayo Odeyingbo was on the field last year, he produced at a high level. And he should get ample opportunity to do that again this year with Ebukam being out for the season with the torn Achilles. If he can produce at the same rate that he did last year, he should be in for another good year, potentially great year. Maybe he joins Kwity Paye as a double-digit sack guy. Okay, if he plays another 80 snaps, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. Dayo Odeyingbo, good year last year. Looking forward to what he's going to bring to the table this year as well. Moving on to the rookie. Now, I think we're all excited about Laiatu Latu and what he brings to the table. We've heard a lot of hype about him. We heard it pre-draft. We heard it during the draft. We've heard it after the draft. We heard it during rookie OTAs. We've heard it during training camp. They were in pads yesterday, and it seems like people are excited about what Laiatu Latu has shown to us so far this year. Right? And look, he's a first-round pick. He should be good this year. Right? And there's been a lot of talk about how polished Latu is and how he's NFL ready. Right? And he needs to show that immediately. And it seems like he is showing that. Colts offensive tackle Bernard Raymond had some thoughts yesterday after going against Laiatu Latu in one-on-ones. And I love hearing the offensive line's perspective because, look, like you can sit back and you can watch. It's like, yeah, he looks great or whatever. Like that's what coaches, that's what his fellow defensive linemen are going to say. But if anyone knows how good Laiatu Latu is, it's the guys trying to block him. So here's Colts offensive tackle Bernard Raymond talking about the new rookie Laiatu Latu and how he's looked so far through training camp.
He's a great player right now, but he's just getting better and better every day. From what I've heard, he's a great rookie too. He's doing what he's told to do. So he's getting all the snacks and everything. No, but on the field, seriously, he's impressive. He seems to fit right in with the defense. He's quick, he's physical, he fits the run game. It's hard to block him in the run game because he's so twitchy, and then same in the pass pro as well. You gotta bring your A game against him, and it makes all of us better. So I'm glad we have him.
That was Colts offensive tackle Bernard Raymond talking about Leatu Latu and how he's looked so far. And look, Latu beat Raymond multiple times yesterday for sacks. In full pads, right? Not one-on-one. We're just kind of touching. No. Legit physical football. And hearing Raymond not only talk about how tough he is to block when he's pass protecting, but also like his run blocking is hard because apparently he's super twitchy or quick, whatever adjective you want to throw in right there. It's good, and like it's one thing to hear coaches rave about a player, right? Because that's what coaches are going to do. Okay, it's very rare that you find a coach that goes to the media and is like, who was terrible today? Fill in the blank. They don't do that. Even if players have bad days, they figure out a way to twist it and make it seem like a positive thing, right? Because as a coach, you have to have your players' backs, right? So hearing Bernard Raymond lay out basically everything that we had heard about Latu coming into training camp and coming into the season in general was nice. Okay, Raymond called him physical, called him twitchy, said he's hard to block. That's the biggest thing for me. I don't care if you're physical. I don't care if you're twitchy. I just want you to be hard to block. And apparently, Leatu Latu is. Okay, so the more I hear people talk about Latu, the more excited I find myself getting. Okay, it seems like through only 4 practices, which isn't very many, and I'm trying really hard not to get too far ahead of myself, it seems like the Colts have found at least a decent player with their first-round pick who plays incredibly hard, which is another nice touch. Shane Steichen was asked yesterday about Leatu Latu, and usually, when people are asked about Latu, they talk about, how physically good he is and, the tape at UCLA and all those things. Shane Steichen highlighted a different part of Latu's game that just made me even more excited about this kid.
I did. And you watch all these rushers in the draft, and they're all talented, but his motor that he had after plays, you could see it. You know what I mean? Even if he gets around the edge and the quarterback steps up, boom, he is turning and running and trying to go get him. And that's what really stood out to me about him was his relentless effort.
That was Colts head coach Shane Steichen talking about the, quote, relentless effort that Leatu Latu has shown. He showed it at UCLA, and now he's showing it at Colts camp. And hearing that Latu has a great motor is awesome because he's going to play more snaps since, Samson Ebukam is out for the year. And look, I want guys on my team that play hard every single play. Okay, that's what I want. And it seems like that's the kind of player that the Colts got in Leatu Latu. And it also makes a lot of sense if you've heard Latu say literally anything at all. Okay, that dude is clearly filled with joy and passion for playing football. Every time he meets with the media, he's just incredibly excited about everything that's going on. Okay, and based on what Steichen said right there, it seems like he plays that way as well. And look, if he plays that hard all year, and if he's as talented as Bernard Raymond just made him out to be in that prior clip, then I don't know how he doesn't have a solid rookie season. Now, I don't think he's going to be a double-digit sack guy because that just isn't what rookies do. Okay, there is an adjustment period for young rushers in the NFL, and Chris Ballard hit on that on Chris Long's podcast about a week and a half ago when he was asked about Leatu Latu and kind of what he's expecting from him this season.
And this as much as anybody, it's hard for young rushers in this league. They're not used to the techniques and the talent that they're about to deal with on the offensive line that they had. It's nothing against what the kids playing in college, but these are grown men playing tackle and guard and center in our league that have been well schooled and trained. And there's a little bit of an adjustment period. But to Latu's credit, and it'll be interesting to see over the next month, how he continues to develop. He is an option rusher, and he is extremely instinctive and athletic. he does some freaky things just with no pads on. So we're excited to add him to the group and think we have a really, really good defensive line group to throw at people this year.
That was Chris Ballard talking about Leatu Latu and everything that he's got going on. And I'm excited for him, man. The more that I hear these people talk about him. And when it comes to that clip, I think the thing that we really need to focus on is how tough it is for rookie edge rushers making the adjustment to the NFL. Okay. And so, look, if you're expecting for Leatu Latu to come out and have like 11 sacks this year, like that's not going to happen. If he gets to double-digit sacks, I will be absolutely stunned. Okay. It'll be really, really shocking to me if he does that because, there are only 23 guys in the NFL last year who had double-digit sacks. Okay. Like it doesn't happen for that many guys because rushing the passer in the NFL isn't an easy thing. It's not. For context, Will Anderson Jr. of the Houston Texans, who won Defensive Rookie of the Year last year, only had 7 sacks. And he was drafted 3rd overall, way higher than Leatu Latu was. Look, if Leatu Latu can get 7 sacks this season, then I will call that a successful year for him. Okay, the Colts, they're deep at the defensive line spot, and that is all thanks to Chris Ballard and his philosophy on how to build a football team. And because of that, they aren't screwed after this, terrible Samson Ebukam injury, right? But obviously defense isn't all about the defensive line. Still waiting on Ballard to make a move on a new safety because that's something that desperately needs to happen. In addition to that, the quarterback position is going to be important as well. Chris Ballard had some interesting thoughts on Anthony Richardson that I'm going to get into when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Often imitated, never duplicated. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Otter Creek, man, that's so true. Watch the show on YouTube. Join the chat. Be part of this community. YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket. That's where you can find us. You can also hit up our text line, 317-228-1430. If you would like to text the show, give me your comments on all the things I'm saying. I'm sure no one liked how I just said Kwity Paye is about to have the best year of his career. And I'm sure you guys didn't like how I said Dayo Odeyingbo is, he was probably the Colts' best pass rusher last year when you consider the idea that he just didn't play as many snaps as all the other guys. And he was second on the team in pressures. And, I can just keep on running through all that. But I just said all that. So let's not repeat ourselves here. All right, let's move on to, the most popular guy in the city of Indianapolis, Anthony Richardson. Now, Chris Long had Chris Ballard on his podcast about a week and a half ago, and he was asking him some questions, obviously, about the offensive line and the defensive line and this upcoming season and all these guys. And, of course, he had to ask him about Anthony Richardson, right? And the answer that we get from Chris Ballard here is fascinating. I find it fascinating, at least, the comparison that he makes at the end. And of course, he speaks about Shane Steichen and his ability to coach quarterbacks. Here's Colts GM Chris Ballard on why they took Anthony Richardson 2 years ago.
Well, okay, so a couple of things. One, I did think about your brother a lot, when we did that, because I'd been a part of that. So, taking much different, taking an offensive lineman than a quarterback, with the limited amount of experience. But then when I have a head coach, Shane Steichen, who is outstanding in terms of his understanding what the position needs and can do and how to fit the offense around it, and then his history of doing it, from Phillip Rivers to Justin Herbert to Jalen Hurts, to watch the just fundamental changes that offensively he was able to make the quarterback successful, really helped me understand, okay, this is the vision you've got to have a vision for the player and what he, how we're going to use him and how he's going to fit within the offense and the scheme. And I thought Shane had a tremendous vision. Now, he did not have the same production as a lot of quarterbacks have, but the flashes were loud and they were really strong. I kept watching, and he's probably a little different, but he reminded me a little of Steve McNair when he was coming out of Alcorn. Now, I was coaching still at the time, but and McNair broke every record and had every, small school record for a quarterback. But just their play style, I thought, was very similar.
That was Colts GM Chris Ballard talking about why they took Anthony Richardson. And I took two things away from that clip the first time I heard it. One, the Steve McNair comparison is so interesting. As a guy who grew up 30 minutes south of Nashville, Steve McNair's kind of the first quarterback that I remember playing in the NFL, right? He was towards the later year of his career, or towards the later years of his career. So it wasn't peak Steve McNair. It wasn't 2003 co-MVP Steve McNair, which was probably the best year of his career. But I don't mind the comparison. Big dude, Steve McNair, 6'2", 230, could move a little bit, could sling it, had a big arm. So don't mind the comparison. But the main thing that I found interesting is just the indirect compliment of Shane Steichen. I think that's kind of the best way to put it. I think it speaks to the amount of faith and trust that Chris Ballard has in Shane Steichen. And when we look, over the course of Shane Steichen's coaching career, we should have a ton of faith and trust in Shane Steichen because he has coached several successful quarterbacks. Now, he mentioned Phillip Rivers in there, but let's be honest. Phillip Rivers was a good quarterback before Shane Steichen showed up, so that one's, fine, whatever. But from there, Shane Steichen was the offensive architect behind Justin Herbert's record-breaking, because that's what it was, record-breaking rookie season. Okay, he shows up in Philadelphia as the offensive coordinator, and this guy in Jalen Hurts, who looked fine the year prior, all of a sudden almost wins the MVP and shows up in a Super Bowl. And who was the offensive coordinator? Who designed that offense? Who called those plays? Who put Jalen Hurts in a position to succeed? Shane Steichen did. Okay, and then last year, he shows up here in Indianapolis. I'm sure he's excited about Anthony Richardson. Based off of that clip right there, it sounds like Shane Steichen was the guy who really advocated for drafting Anthony Richardson. So that's why they took him. And so he comes in, he's expecting to get this very raw but highly athletic quarterback in Anthony Richardson. He gets hurt, only plays 12 quarters, so he ends up with Gardner Minshew and creates this functional offense, 11th in scoring in the NFL, which is new, not bad. That's above average. And they were 13th in DVOA with Gardner Minshew, a guy who's probably going to be the backup quarterback in Las Vegas to Aiden O'Connell. With that guy as the starting quarterback, they were able to put together a functional offense, which I would call a success given who was playing quarterback. Okay, that's what Shane Steichen has done. And look, it's, and now they take Anthony Richardson because of Shane Steichen and what he's done in his career, developing quarterbacks and putting them in a position to succeed. Now, on one hand, you could tell me that's a little crazy taking a quarterback for a coach who's never been a head coach in the NFL before. Right? Like, seriously, because when they took Anthony Richardson, they're listening to this guy in Shane Steichen who hadn't proven anything as a head coach yet. And I'm glad that they listened to him because I think he's a good coach. I said it a couple weeks ago. I think he's the 10th best coach in the NFL, and I'm going to stand by that until he proves me wrong. But on the other hand, it's like, why not trust him? Like why hire a guy if you don't trust his opinion? I'm excited for this Colts team this year. I am. I think that the defensive line is going to be just fine without Ebukam because Chris Ballard has done a good job of stockpiling depth at the defensive line spot. Shane Steichen is a good head coach. Okay, we've seen him consistently help elevate quarterbacks throughout his career. Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, Gardner Minshew last year. And I have no reason to believe that he won't do it again with a guy in Anthony Richardson who, tools-wise, has better tools than all those other guys that I just mentioned, except for maybe Justin Herbert. That guy's kind of a stud. So we'll see. Got a lot coming up later today. Will Brinson, NFL writer for CBS Sports, he's going to join me at 11. He wrote an interesting article. Not a fun one. I commend him on writing this, but he basically wrote this article where he picked 7 teams that made the playoffs last year to not repeat and make the playoffs again this year. A few of the teams he picked, man, really kind of jump off the page. I'm excited to talk to him. That's coming up at 11 o'clock. And while I'm talking about quarterbacks and Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen, the two most important parts of any football team is your head coach and, more importantly, your starting quarterback. So I decided to go through every division, and I'm thinking about, who are the best teams, if I was to pick who's going to win each division, who would I pick and all that kind of stuff. I was like, you know what, let's just make this really easy. If you were to pick the winner of a division based solely on the head coach and the quarterback, you would probably get 80% of them right. And I'm going to test that theory when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Will Brinson of CBS Sports set to join me next segment to discuss this new article that he put out, I believe, yesterday, if I remember properly. So, yeah, let's go. I'm excited. Will Brinson, he's going to join me coming up here in about 20 minutes. But before we get to that, quarterbacks, coaches, head coaches, more specifically, two most important things for any team. Okay, like if you should head over to YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, subscribe, join the chat. I announced yesterday that I am a Miami Dolphins fan, and I'm not, in fact, a Colts fan, which is cool. I think it helps me to be a little bit more honest about the Colts. I don't have my fandom getting in the way. And Otter Creek, who I love because he just throws comments at everything, and it's awesome, was telling me that, the Dolphins at least have a chance this year. Because Chris Ballard isn't their GM and all that fun stuff. And it's like, no, they don't, because the four best quarterbacks in the NFL all play in the AFC, and Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow, right? But it's obviously not all about the quarterback. You have to have a good head coach as well. And look, I believe that, if you're with your buddies, if you're on FanDuel, DraftKings, wherever you like to do your sports gambling, if you were to bet division winners solely based on who has the best head coach and quarterback combo in each division, how often would you be right? I think you'd get at least 80% of them correct, because those two positions are the most important things in the NFL. So I have decided to give this a go. So we're going to start in the AFC. Let's just start with the easiest division to pick, the AFC West. Okay, if you were going to pick the division winner based solely off of quarterback and coach combo for the AFC West, I mean, it's the Chiefs. It's not complicated. This one's easy. Okay, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, for obvious reasons. Let's maybe start with the fact that they've won 3 Super Bowls together. And if you want more facts, let's just go to the fact that they've won back-to-back Super Bowls together. And all right, I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if they were the first team to three-peat. It's the best coach in the NFL paired with the best quarterback in the NFL. It's not a hard choice, even though I'm excited to watch the AFC West this year, because I think Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh being together going forward is going to be great. I think they're actually really going to challenge the Chiefs for the division title. I think that highly of Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert. Hey, the Chargers, man. How about wasting a few years of Justin Herbert's career with Anthony Lynn and Brandon Staley? Jeez, that's brutal. So the AFC West, pretty easy. Chiefs with Mahomes and Andy Reid. Moving to the AFC East, you got to go with the Bills. Okay, because it's Josh Allen, the second best quarterback in the NFL, and Sean McDermott, who, contrary to belief, is in fact a good head coach. I like Sean McDermott. I think he does a good job. Okay, McDermott has more wins than any active coach that has not won a Super Bowl. Okay, this dude has won a lot of games in Buffalo. Right? He is a good coach, and in all honesty, if they didn't have to play against Mahomes and the Chiefs every year, they probably have a Super Bowl under their belt by now. Seriously, or maybe they just go to the Super Bowl again and miss it wide right. I don't know. Maybe that's very possible. Next on the list, the AFC North. This was the hardest division to pick because you've got Joe Burrow and Zach Taylor, right? Who they've been to a Super Bowl together. Like, that's a great combo. You look at the Steelers and it's like Mike Tomlin never had a losing season. That's a really good coach over there. But then you're like, Russell Wilson, whatever. And then you're like, oh, the Browns. It's like Deshaun Watson hasn't been good since he came back from his legal issues. And Kevin Stefanski is an awesome coach. Like, if you wanted to sit there and tell me that Kevin Stefanski is the best coach in the AFC North, I would not disagree with you. I think he's awesome. He just doesn't have the right quarterback to win games. And then you land on the team that I've picked. The Baltimore Ravens have the best head coach quarterback combo in the AFC North. Harbaugh's the best coach in that division. He's the longest tenured coach in the NFL. He's been in Baltimore longer than anyone else has been anywhere. Yeah, I believe this. He's going on like year 13, year 14. He's been there a while. The people in the building, just in general, have all been there for forever, which just gives you a little extra boost. And of course, I've got Lamar Jackson, the dude who's won 2 MVPs. right? Sure, his playoff struggles haven't been great, but guess what? We're not talking about the playoffs. We're talking about the regular season where Lamar Jackson just proceeds to cook everybody. Really hard to pick against that duo of John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson, even though I obviously have immense respect for Joe Burrow and Zach Taylor. Okay, so far through the three teams that I've talked about, if the Ravens didn't win the AFC North, I wouldn't be surprised. Whereas if the Bills and the Chiefs didn't win their divisions, I would be immensely surprised. Moving on to the AFC South. This is the hardest division to do because there's just so many question marks. It really is, right? This is obviously the Colts division. I went with the Texans. Okay, DeMeco Ryans was a great defensive coordinator in San Francisco before he took over the head coaching job for one of the NFL teams that he played for, the Houston Texans. I thought he did a good job as head coach last year, really maximizing what he got from CJ Stroud, really maximizing what the Texans had on defense, maximizing what he got from Nico Collins. Like DeMeco Ryans did a great job in Houston last year. And CJ Stroud was a top 10 quarterback in the NFL last year. Now, when it comes to this division, the AFC South, I do think that Shane Steichen is the best coach in the division, but Anthony Richardson is he's such a question mark. Okay, like I can sit here and I can be hopeful and like, look, I have all the faith in the world in Shane Steichen. I think that if Anthony Richardson is healthy, he'll have a good year just because he's playing for Shane Steichen, right? Like that's just how highly I think of Steichen. And so we'll kind of see how things go there, but with all the question marks, like I like Doug Peterson, I like Trevor Lawrence, but they've just been so up and down over the past couple of years. It was hard to justify putting them over DeMeco Ryans and CJ Stroud as the best quarterback and head coach combo in the AFC South. We'll see how this one goes, though. I'm very intrigued about the AFC South. Will Brinson, who I've got joining me here in about 10 minutes, he basically published this opinion that he doesn't think that the Texans are going to make the playoffs this next year. So I'm curious who he thinks is going to win the AFC South if the Texans don't. So that is the AFC. Let's move now into the NFC as we continue to highlight the best head coach quarterback combos in every division. The NFC West. This one's easy, even though the NFC West is loaded, and I think it's going to be a much tougher division than people realize. I love the hiring of Mike McDonald, in Seattle. I think they're going to be a pretty tough out. The Cardinals, they got better every week last year. Interested to see how they look, but the pick here is obvious. You got to go Rams with Sean McVay and the best quarterback in the NFC, Matthew Stafford. Sean McVay is the second best coach in the NFL. Okay, the dude's awesome. Okay, and honestly, like the Rams are kind of my pick to win the division. I've been flirting with like this half-baked take that I'm going to throw at Will Brinson when he joins me here in about 10 minutes of the 49ers not making the playoffs this year, which I think would be wild. It's half-baked, so I don't have it fully fledged out, but been toying with it a little bit. But when we look at the Rams, look, this duo's they won a Super Bowl not that long ago. Like I said, they are my pick to win this division this year. And, you know, while they're working, the 49ers are filled with contract extension drama and holdouts. So kind of tough to not pick the Rams in that division with all the crap that San Francisco 49ers have going on right now. Next, the NFC East. This division, also not really that hard. The NFC is so boring compared to the AFC just because there's just a lack of great quarterback play over there. Okay, like the NFC East is potentially going to be the most competitive division in that conference. And your quarterbacks are Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, Daniel Jones, and Jaden Daniels, who's a rookie. It's like, I don't know about that. So I'm with Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts, right? Even though Nick Sirianni had a rough year last year after hiring two bad coordinators, still think he's the best coach in that division. Okay, like Mike McCarthy, whatever. Dan Quinn in Washington, you know, he's fine. And then Brian Dable is an awesome coach, but I don't know. He left Josh Allen, and all of a sudden he's not as good. So we'll see how the NFC East looks, but you got to go Sirianni and Jalen Hurts. I do think Jalen Hurts is the best quarterback in that division as well. Maybe it's Dak. I don't know. That gap's pretty narrow for me, so I can easily justify taking Sirianni over a guy like Mike McCarthy, who is probably about to spend his final year in Dallas. So next division, the NFC North. This one was pretty tough too. I went with Dan Campbell and Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions. They are my pick for the NFC North. And the Lions are an interesting case just because like the coordinators get so much credit. Like Ben Johnson, he's the hot, new, young coordinator that everyone wants to hire as their head coach, right? Had multiple head coaching offers. He turned all of them down. And, he's staying. He's in Detroit. I feel like whenever I, watch other talk shows or listen to other talk shows, they talk about the coordinators more than they talk about Dan Campbell. But here's the thing. If the captain of your ship sucks, you're not sailing anywhere. Okay, Dan Campbell is the undoubted leader of that team. They are. Okay, he gets his players to buy in and play hard. That's an important skill, and that is a skill that he is fully displayed in these past few years. Okay, Jared Goff has developed into a nice starting quarterback. Okay, he got a big deal in the offseason, $53 million a year. Pretty insane. And I got to be honest, I don't have that much faith in Jordan Love. Okay, going to talk to Will Brinson about that when he comes on here in about, 5 minutes or so. He had 9 good games last year, and that's really it. Meanwhile, the Bears and the Vikings are playing rookies. So went with Dan Campbell, Jared Goff, and the Lions is the best quarterback coach combo in the NFC North. Last one here in the NFC South. This division, not easy either, just because they're all so bad. All these teams are terrible. I went with the Falcons. Went with Raheem Morris and Kirk Cousins. Now, I know that Raheem Morris had a bad stretch as a head coach early in his career. That was over a decade ago. Okay, he's a completely different coach since then. He's a completely different person since then. Because if you give someone 10 years to change and develop and become better, a lot of times they do. Okay, plus Kirk Cousins is hands down the best quarterback in that division. Okay, Baker Mayfield, who cares? He's fine. He's solid. He's a nice little placeholder quarterback, right? And then you look around the rest of that division, Derek Carr, who cares? The NFC South is just so terrible. And then, of course, in Carolina, you've got Bryce Young with a new rookie head coach. So definitely not going to pick them. But yeah, that is my prediction. If you were to pick division winners based solely on quarterback head coach combo, I think you'd get 80% of them right. To run through it one more time, the AFC West Chiefs with Mahomes and Andy Reid, AFC East, the Bills with Allen and McDermott, the AFC North, the Ravens with Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson, AFC South, DeMeco Ryans and CJ Stroud, NFC West, the Rams with McVay and Stafford, and the NFC East with Sirianni and Jalen Hurts, NFC North with Campbell and Goff for the Lions, and then finally the NFC South with the Falcons with Raheem Morris and Kirk Cousins. That's our one of the Real Jonathan Smith Show coming up. Joining me here in about 5 minutes, NFL writer, analyst, and other things for CBS Sports, Will Brinson, set to join me. That's coming your way here in about 5 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket, about to be joined by the one and only Will Brinson of CBS Sports. And, man, he decided to write an article that was probably fun to write. I think this is him right here. Hey, is this Will?
Yep.
What's going on, Will? This is Jonathan. How you doing, man?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing great. And I read your article yesterday, and I have to commend you, because I'm sure that you've just got a ton of angry, pissed off fans in your mentions. So I'm curious, which fan base has been the nastiest?
Are we live? Are we live right now, by the way?
We are live right now, by the way. Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry
cool.
about that.
Sorry. Yeah. Good. No, I didn't want. I made sure before I said yes. There are some peeved off fan bases. Probably the Browns fans. But Browns fans are usually the angriest in general when it comes to these articles. Okay. They accuse you of hating on Deshaun Watson for off-field reasons, which, in and of itself, not like the craziest concept in the entire world. But I mean, it's mostly like, and look, I get it. I'm an NC State fan. When you feel like the whole world's against you because you don't win as often as maybe you should. I think Browns fans are there. They're trying to go to the playoffs for the fourth time since they came back to the Cleveland in '99 this year, and they did it last year. With 5 starting quarterbacks. Flacco comes in. I mean, Kevin Stefanski, incredible coaching job. It's just like the underlying metrics of Cleveland's season outperforming their expected win, expectancy, and one-score games. We have to have questions about the offensive line with Bill Callahan gone. Have to have questions about the offense. With no Nick Chubb, probably unlikely to start the season, and then Watson, who just hasn't been very good. I mean, I think it's a reasonable. As Bengals bounce back, I think it's a reasonable take that the Browns could potentially miss the playoffs, even at like a 9-8 season. But yeah, they get the most mad out of anyone. One guy said that he wasn't going to acknowledge my existence, to which point I noted that he was doing just that by tweeting at me.
Yeah. That's the way that works. I liked your list. I think there's 3 that are pretty easily to agree with the Buccaneers not making it back, with the Falcons being, you would think, a lot better with Kirk Cousins and Raheem Morris there. The Steelers, I mean, I don't have any faith in Justin Fields or Russell Wilson to really kind of be better, especially with the Bengals improving. Same thing with the Browns that you just ran through. And then you took 4 really big swings, which I love. Which of these picks to miss the playoffs are you most confident in, and which one are you the least confident in?
It's the Rams, Texans, Cowboys, and Packers, maybe?
Yes, those are the other 4.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is like, you look at those teams, you're like, well, that's, these teams don't really profile. Like, they don't profile as teams that you would expect to miss the playoffs because they're good football teams. And I think, like, if you told me I'm probably going to pick the Rams. I'm a big Rams guy. I'm a big Matthew Stafford fan. I'm probably going to pick the Rams to win the Super Bowl. So I don't think they're going to miss the playoffs. Yeah, the Packers are really interesting because they have, Jordan Love, who, was 3-6 through the first half of the season last year, not playing very well. Brian Gutekunst comes out and, admits that he's not sure if Jordan Love is the future franchise quarterback for Green Bay. And then the second half of the season, he throws 18 touchdowns and 1 interception. You prorate that over a full season, and he's, slam dunk unanimous MVP, and the Packers are the number 1 seed in the NFC. So it's with Green Bay, I think it's like, which one are you getting? I would say I'm probably least confident in the Cowboys. There's been a lot of it's the Cowboys. See, the other teams you can kind of take, like, you can kind of look at it and say, all right, like, statistically speaking, X and X provide some opportunity for regression in 2024. With the Cowboys, you're sort of just banking on Jerry Jones is creating this pressure cooker where you have Mike McCarthy in the final year of his contract. They're not paying CeeDee Lamb, who's not there. They lose Tyron Smith, who's probably a Hall of Famer at left tackle, although good buzz coming out about Guyton right now. You lose Dan Quinn, your defensive coordinator. It's really more of all of this stuff is happening. Can they handle the pressure? And so I think that makes it a little more difficult to believe in, just because there's less underlying metrics involved with that. So I would say least confident in that. Most confident, I mean, probably, I think, this would sound crazy, but probably maybe the Texans, just because if you look at Houston, I can't remember. I think I picked them to win the division last year, and I had them on my list of teams that would make the playoffs. But at one point, they were, I think, 4-6, maybe they were 6-5, and the Jaguars were 8-3. The division was over. Jacksonville had just beaten them. Halfway through the season, Houston was really almost under 500. They lost to the Panthers last year, and I think C.J. Stroud's incredible. They got a ton of great weapons. D'Amico Ryan's a great coach, and I think the defense could be good. But they were great in one-score games, and you could see a situation where, just like Jacksonville last year, Jacksonville had a great 2022. They come to 2023. Trevor Lawrence is the top 5 MVP candidate by Vegas odds. The Jaguars are a top 5 to 10 team to win the Super Bowl by Vegas odds, just like the Texans this year. And for whatever reason, that second half of the season got away from them. Weird things can happen. So I would say the Texans, mainly because I think the Titans will be a little bit better than people expect. And then I think if Anthony Richardson is healthy for 17 games, the Colts are certainly a sleeper to make the playoffs.
Okay, sounds good. So joined by Will Brinson, NFL writer and analyst for CBS Sports. I'm glad you brought up the Texans, because that seems to be a team that everyone just loves right now. Like, everyone's all in on Stroud. Everyone's all in on D'Amico Ryans. Like, I'm here in Indianapolis, and I'm telling my listeners, like, I don't know, man. Houston's going to be really good. And as you mentioned, they won the division last year. So if they were to miss the playoffs, who do you think would replace them as division champs?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously Tennessee would be the long shot there, and I don't think that's the case. But I really do think the Titans would be better than people think. They brought Brian Callahan. I'm bullish on him as a coach. His dad, Bill Callahan, is maybe the greatest offensive line coach in NFL history, or one of them. He's definitely one of them. And he leaves Cleveland. He's coming over there. I think that offensive line will improve. Beats it up in the offseason as well. My pal and colleague Pete Briscoe is really high on Will Levis. Has been since before the draft, and thinks he could, maybe not this year, but could turn into sort of a Josh Allen light. They had Ridley, you had Hopkins. I mean, that team's going to be a problem, and I think they'll be in contention. Ultimately, though, if you're picking a team to dethrone the Texans, for me, it's probably Jacksonville. Although I wouldn't be surprised if it was Indy. I mean, Indy was right there at the end of the season, to make the playoffs, in the mix of the division. As Jacksonville just cratered. I mean, they went 1-5 down the stretch. But I think for Indy, credit to Shane Steichen. Great job coaching up, after Anthony Richardson goes down. But, it's going to come down to, how's that offensive line play? Can Richardson stay healthy for 17 games? Can you get a full season of Jonathan Taylor? And, can that defense sort of maintain a middle of the road level to win the division? I think that's, if I had to pick, I would say Jacksonville, just because there's a little bit less unknown than you have with Tennessee and Indianapolis, just because of the health stuff and the quarterback situations.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I had to take last year where I said that Jacksonville was going to be the 1 seed in the AFC, and I felt so good after those first 11 weeks to just then get
3. Yeah, I mean, they looked like a really good team. I mean, they had a great, easy schedule, and they absolutely created. And it's interesting because in 2022. We talked about the Jaguars winning the division. The Titans cratered. In 2022, the Jaguars stole the division, beat the Chargers in the playoffs. Everybody's like, oh, the Jaguars are about to take that next leap in 2023. Well, literally everyone is doing the exact same thing with the Texans this year, which I just think there's an interesting sort of corollary there between those two teams.
Okay, you mentioned leaps, and once again, I'm joined by Will Brinson, writer and analyst for CBS Sports. So it's not an unpopular opinion to have, saying that Anthony Richardson is going to take a leap. What are your thoughts and expectations for Anthony Richardson in his second year here in Indy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a wide-ranging group of outcomes, or there's a wide range of outcomes, I should say. I think just because of what happened last year, where you had these design runs, and he's taking these hits, and he's missing time with his shoulder, he's missing time with concussion or head injury, whatever they were calling it, neck injury. I can't remember how they phrased it. I don't want to throw the Colts under the bus there. But he misses all those games because of that. So the downside is he only plays a couple games because he is built like Cam Newton, but not built like Cam Newton, and the offense is just requiring too much wear and tear. I think Shane Steichen's come out and said he's not going to reduce the number of quarterback runs. On the other hand, the upside is literally he wins the MVP and the Colts win the division and are, one of the best teams in the AFC. Like, that's not off the table. They have enough weapons on offense where he could take that kind of massive leap. And if he scored 15 rushing touchdowns, I wouldn't bat an eye. I mean, the guy's an unbelievable athlete. I think he showed a lot in the passing game last year early on that really surprised some people in terms of his touch and his accuracy and his movement inside the pocket. People are, sort of one of those things, some of those things people knocked him on before the draft process. So, like, I don't know. I mean, there's an infinite range of outcomes for Anthony Richardson season with, he's the best player in football in 2024 is on the table.
Jeez, I hope you're right. But like you said, like there's all these different potential outcomes because we saw him throw 84 passes last year.
That's not like a 40 percentile, outcome type of situation. But neither is, he only plays one game. I think it's a sort of a bell curve in that sense.
Yeah, well, no doubt whatsoever. So I want to move on here to the Packers because you put them on the list as teams that could potentially miss the playoffs. And look, it really jumped out because they just signed Jordan Love to this massive deal, tying him as the highest paid player in the history of the NFL. Like, what are kind of your thoughts on that deal?
Well, I mean, I think the contract's fine. I think people want to get up in arms about quarterback contracts. The reality is, when you're a young quarterback who has shown franchise potential and you're up to get paid, you're going to be probably the highest paid player in football or a top 5 highest paid player in football. Like, people are mad that Tua Tagovailoa is a top 5 paid quarterback in football. It's like, that's just the timing of it. I mean, if you cover this league long enough, you'll see Jimmy Garoppolo and Derek Carr be the highest paid quarterbacks in the sport, which is just a ridiculous thing to say, but it happened at one point in time. Back with the Broncos and the Raiders and the 49ers respectively. So yeah, I mean, like, Jordan Love, they traded up in the first round and drafted him, even though they had Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers wins, a couple MVPs. Love sits on the bench. It's lauded as one of the worst picks ever. And in reality, it's one of those things where you got to have some patience. And they did. They had patience. They had conviction. They let him sit there. They traded Rodgers. They put Love in the starting lineup. He struggled, as I mentioned, through the first 9 games of the season last year, just ups and downs. And that was sort of a hallmark of his time in college. I mean, at Utah State, he's a streaky player, right? I mean, he's a really good player, but he was a streaky player. And he had some highs and some really high highs and some really low lows. Get on some hot streaks and then get on some bad runs. And that's sort of my only concern with the Packers for this year is that, are we going to get a full season of the second half of Jordan Love last year? I mean, that's asking a lot. Like that, like he would literally, if he doubled that thing up, he would finish the unanimous MVP. If he throws 36 touchdowns and 2 picks and 5,000 passing yards or whatever it is, like he's winning the MVP. And so I think, what's more likely is that we get a blend of the first half and the second half, but a confident Jordan Love in this Matt LaFleur offense that he's gotten used to now. He's get his feet underneath him. Packers fans, I think going into last year would have said, all right, we just want to know that he's the guy for sure. And through 9 games, they didn't know that. Now, through 17 games, they definitely know that. And then the 18th game, they smoked the Cowboys on the road in the playoffs. I mean, there's no doubt about it once you get through the postseason. I just think the expectations with the contract and with the second half performance are going to be really, really high. I have no problem with the contract. He's the future franchise quarterback. But I do think that, we could see maybe a little bit of a slower start than people were expecting. On the other hand, tons of weapons. Packers could be a Super Bowl team this year.
Okay, fair enough. Last question for you, Will. Once again, joined by CBS Sports NFL writer and an analyst, Will Brinson. I want to throw this half-baked take that I have at you. So what about the 49ers missing the playoffs? I know that seems a bit crazy, but you got Trent Williams holding out. You got Brandon Ayuk holding out. There seems to be just a lot of extra non-football related drama going on up there. Any chance that happens? I know that you like the Rams as well, which makes me feel a little bit better about throwing this take your way.
I think. It's not off the table. There's 7 teams that have made the playoffs the last 3 years. I think it's the Ravens, 49ers, Bills, Chiefs, Cowboys, Eagles, and Bucks. That 8 teams, I can't remember. I don't know. Anyway, it's like that group has made the playoffs each of the last 3 years. Oh, wow. And so you just got these consistent teams that have really come into their own. Look, could the 49ers miss the playoffs? Yeah. I mean, good teams miss the playoffs all the time. You don't see it with great teams. Now, the difference with the 49ers is, like Brock Purdy's going to get paid. I think he's a really good quarterback. I think he has a great season. He's got tons of weapons. He's mastered the Kyle Shanahan offense already. It's a perfect fit for him, his decision-making, his accuracy, his quick thinking with the ball in his hands. I don't think Brandon Ayuk is going to miss any time. I don't think Trent Williams is going to miss any time. I think they'll either get him paid or they'll just get back in and they'll waive the fines. That's just how it's going to work. They know they have a finite window to win the Super Bowl. The case against the 49ers to me is more of a, hey, look, this division is suddenly really good, where the Rams have a great season. The Seahawks under Mike McDonald with that Ryan Grubb offense have exceed expectations. And then the Cardinals kind of take a step forward. So even that, like, it's tough to find, you're thinking, I mean, look, if you take, let's say you give the Rams the division, you give the Cowboys or Eagles the division, you give the Lions or the Packers that division, and then one NFC South team, all of a sudden, if you assume the Cowboys, the loser of the Cowboys Eagles and the loser of the Lions and the Packers is a wild card team, you only have one spot left. And so it could come down to San Francisco and Seattle maybe battling it out. I just think that roster is too good. I think the coaching is too good. And I think the young quarterback is still too good. Unless it's a big time injury thing, I think San Francisco is probably going to make the playoffs.
Okay, fair enough. Will, thanks for your time, man. You were awesome. I love your energy, dude. You were great.
That's a lot of coffee. Appreciate it. See you, buddy.
You got it, man. See you. That was Will Brinson of CBS Sports, NFL writer and analyst. Dude's awesome. A lot of coffee. Obviously, when we come back here in about 4 minutes, I got a lot of audio. And a lot of you owe Chris Ballard an apology. I'll tell you why when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's live on the radio, 1430 AM. Maybe you're watching on YouTube. The best way to watch, head over to YouTube, subscribe to Indy Sports Ticket, hop in the chat, trying to grow that channel just a little bit. Or maybe you're listening via that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download on the App Store or the Google Play Store. Big shout out to Will Brinson, who joined me for the last segment. If you missed it, you can catch it via the podcast, The Real Jonathan Smith Podcast. It'll come out shortly after the show. You can find that wherever you get your podcast. Now, moving into the teas, some of you, not all of you, but some of you owe Chris Ballard a legitimate apology. You do. After the NFL draft this year, Chris Ballard walked up to the podium and he said, guys, I tried. Okay, we made some big offers. We tried to move up in, we tried to move up in the NFL draft. We made some big offers. No one would let us move up. And we found out last night that Chris Ballard was telling the truth. And I came on here and I said, I think he's telling the truth. People were like, no, Jonathan, you haven't been here very long. He was lying. Then we find out last night that he offered the Giants for the 6th pick. The Colts offered the 15th pick, the 46th pick, and a 2025 second-round pick to move up to number 6 to potentially draft Malik Neighbors, Brock Bowers, Roma Dunze, whoever it was that they wanted. And look, Giants general manager didn't want to do that. He didn't want to move back that far. Okay, and then we're going to get some, he should have tried harder. He should have offered more stuff. But here's the issue with that. Because this is just the way that sports media and the way that this stuff works. You have people that like you. You have people that don't like you. If Chris Ballard had offered every pick in the draft, the people that like Chris Ballard would have been like, that's a good trade. That's a good trade. And then all the people that didn't like him would be like, you gave up too much stuff. Oh my gosh. So that's just the way that it works. I just appreciate that he was telling the truth. He did make an attempt. That is a good offer for the number 6 overall pick. And the Giants just didn't want to move down to 15. Makes sense. I get it. Right? So Ballard's trying. He also made an attempt for L'Jarius Sneed in the offseason, who opted to go and play for the Titans. Now, praise the Lord for Chris Ballard. Statement it's the first time I've ever said it. It's the second time. I said it earlier in the show, but hey, whatever. Praise the Lord for Chris Ballard and his offensive and defensive line philosophy. The biggest story so far coming out of Colts Tramp is the Achilles injury to Samson Ebukam, however you say it. I went back and I listened to an older episode of the Green Light podcast hosted by Chris Long, played in the NFL for a long time, all those things, where he interviewed Chris Ballard. This interview happened about a week ago. And during the interview, Chris Long asked Chris Ballard his philosophy on how he likes to build his teams. And in it, Chris Ballard gives a very detailed response, and he hits on something very important that we're seeing play out this season.
Yeah, I think it matters. It's a big man's game. And of course, there's going to be exceptions, that go on in play. We try to slant towards, more height, weight, and speed at each and every position. Now they gotta have good tape. We're not just taking all height, weight, and speed guys, but they gotta have good tape. But I do think it's a big man's game. I do think that those big men disrupt the game more, and especially third down. And look, I am front. It's just the way I've been trained in this league, both O-line and D-line, just very front driven. And I just believe as the season wears on, they're going to win games for you down the stretch. And those are the two positions, next to quarterback, O-line and D-line. Like when you start, if you don't have enough depth there, guys wear down. And even more, if you have injuries at the position, finding replacements is almost next to impossible. So you better load up on them in the offseason when you get a chance.
He's exactly right. And that's what he's done. He has loaded up on offensive and defensive linemen in the offseason. He's right, because when those guys get hurt, there aren't good players just like sitting out there that you can grab to put on your offensive or your defensive line. Okay, there's a lack of options once guys get hurt and you're having to hit, in-season free agency stuff. Okay, so it is a good thing that Chris Ballard has built the roster this way with Samson Ebukam's injury, right? And yesterday was the first day that the Colts had media availability since it was announced that Ebukam has been ruled out for the year with a torn Achilles. So obviously, a lot of the conversation, a lot of the questions yesterday during the media time was about Ebukam and who's going to fill his shoes, who's going to replace him and hopefully duplicate or do better than the production that he gave us last year. And so I'm about to play this clip from Shane Steichen because he was obviously asked. And in this clip, Shane Steichen names 3 players specifically that I would like to discuss. I got to be honest, I'm excited about all 3 of them. Here is Colts head coach Shane Steichen discussing who's going to get more time on the field because of the Ebukam injury.
Yeah, Kwity, Dayo, and Latu. I mean, it's time those guys need to step up. I mean, they're good players, and now obviously Latu coming in rookie year. Obviously, we like where he's at, and we got to keep repping that and go from there.
Shane Steichen giving you 3 players right there: Kwity Paye, Dayo Odeyingbo, and Latu. And I want to start with Kwity Paye, who is going to have the best year of his career this year. Kwity Paye is coming off the best year of his career last year. We saw him set a career high with sacks with 8.5, which is a solid number. Okay, there were only 23 players in the NFL last year who had double-digit sacks. So 8.5 sacks, that is good production, especially on a Colts team that rotates defensive linemen with the depth that they have the way that they do. Now, if you wanted to push back, say, well, Jonathan, he wasn't that good last year. The stat you would point to is that he only had 17 pressures, which is a fair thing. But he made them pay off with 8.5 sacks. Okay, he's a good run defender who doesn't miss tackles. Okay, his missed tackle percentage last year was 0. He did not miss a tackle last year. That is impressive. And I think he's going to be even better this year. Now, I think one of the things we have to keep in mind with Kwity Paye, and one of the things that Kwity Paye haters love to just kind of throw out there is that, oh, he was a first-round pick. He should be awesome. He wasn't like the number 3 overall pick, like a Joey Bosa or a Nick Bosa was. He was the 21st overall selection, okay? Like, come on now. Like, let's be serious here. And I think for a guy who was selected 21st overall, he's come in, he's been a solid presence on this Colts defensive line. He's coming off of a really good year last year with 8.5 sacks, okay? And the other thing that we've seen from Kwity Paye that has me excited, and part of why I think he's going to be even better this next year, is we have seen a steady increase in production from him since he entered the NFL. His sack and tackle numbers have increased every single year. And I think that'll happen again because he's up for an extension. This magical thing happens in every single sport. When guys are up for extensions, they just tend to play a little bit harder and they just tend to play a little bit better. If you don't believe me, Chicago Cubs, Cody Bellinger, last year signed a 1-year deal, wanted a long-term one. He was awesome. Signs, a longer-term deal with the Cubs. And guess what? He's not very good this year. Look at the history of Paul George's career. Okay, if you look at his contracts when he was playing with the Clippers, he consistently played less than 60 games the first 4 years of his contract. And then the final year of his contract, this last year, he played in like 70. When players are in contract years and when players are up for contract extensions like Kwity Paye is this year, they tend to play better. Okay, that combined with the fact that Ebukam is not playing all year, I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if Kwity Paye was a double-digit sack guy. He might have been last year if he hadn't missed a game. Okay, the work that he's put in during the offseason has been very well documented. Okay, trainer went on a podcast. Other players have talked about it. He's lost 7-8 pounds, which is, that's a good thing. Okay, which you would think would help him win with quickness off the edge. I think we're going to get, at minimum, another good year from Kwity Paye because he was good last year. And I don't expect him to regress when he's only 25 years old. And I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if he had a great year, if he had a double-digit sack year. Okay, he has clearly put in the work during the offseason. Okay, he's playing for a contract extension, which is extra motivation, and he's shown consistent improvement during his career. And I think that that is a trend that we will continue to see from Kwity Paye. Moving on here to Dayo Odeyingbo. Oh, man, coming out with the takes today. Dayo Odeyingbo was better than Samson Ebukam last year. He was. Okay, Dayo Odeyingbo was another player that was mentioned by Shane Steichen when he was asked who's going to have to step up with Samson Ebukam being out for the rest of the year. And Dayo Odeyingbo is probably the one that I'm most excited about. He's going to have another good year as well, like Kwity Paye, because like Kwity Paye, he had a good year last year. He had 8 sacks last year. And you're like, Jonathan, that's only 8 sacks. That's whatever. He had 8 sacks last year, and he played 80 less snaps than Samson Ebukam and Kwity Paye. He had more pressures than both of them last year in 80 less snaps. When Dayo Odeyingbo was on the field last year, he got to the quarterback, and he was the best pass rusher the Colts had. The only Colts player that had more pressures than Dayo Odeyingbo last year was DeForest Buckner, who played almost 250 more snaps than he did. Based on the numbers, when Dayo Odeyingbo was on the field, he was the Colts' best pass rusher in only his 3rd year. The dude can flat out get to and get after the quarterback. And with Samson Ebukam not playing this year with the torn Achilles, which is terrible, that should give Dayo Odeyingbo more opportunities to be on the field during passing situations. Okay, Dayo Odeyingbo produced at a high level last year when he was on the field, and he should get ample opportunity to do that again this year with Ebukam being out for the whole season. If he can just produce at the same rate that he did last year, he's going to have another good year. He could potentially have a double-digit sack year, which would be awesome for a guy who only started 1 game last year. Okay, Dayo Odeyingbo, I like him. I think he's going to be good, and I'm excited to see what he brings to the table. Now, let's move on to the player that everyone's excited about, Laiatu Latu. This year's first-round pick for the Colts, selected 15th overall, first defensive player off the board, all those things. There's been a lot of talk pre-draft, during the draft, post-draft, during training camp. There's just been a lot of talk about how good this kid is and how he's NFL ready. And look, he needs to show that immediately. And it seems like he's showing that based off of what we've heard coming out of Colts training camp. Colts offensive tackle Bernard Raymond had some thoughts after going up against him yesterday and some one-on-ones and things of that nature in full pads. Here's what Bernard Raymond had to say about Colts new rookie Laiatu Latu and how he's performed so far through training camp.
He's a great player right now, but he's just getting better and better every day. From what I've heard, he's a great rookie too. He's doing what he's told to do, so he's getting all the snacks and everything. No, but on the field, seriously, he's impressive. He seems to fit right in with the defense. He's quick, he's physical, he fits the run game. It's hard to block him in the run game because he's so twitchy, and then same in the pass pro as well. You gotta bring your A game against him, and it makes all of us better. So I'm glad we have him.
That was Bernard Raymond, Colts offensive tackle, discussing Laiatu Latu, Colts new rookie. And look, it's one thing to hear coaches rave about a player, okay? Because Laiatu Latu could have the worst practice of his life, and whoever the defensive line coach is, and Gus Bradley and Shane Steichen would figure out some sort of way to be like, yeah, he was, not as good as we wanted today, but he did a couple good things. We're going to go look at the film. And, that's the answer that you would get. It's a completely different thing to hear someone that you compete against admit that you're a good player. And Bernard Raymond, laid out everything that we had heard about him coming into this season. Bernard Raymond called him physical, called him twitchy, called him explosive, described him as hard to block, which is great. Like, I don't care if you're twitchy, physical, or, explosive or whatever, just be hard to block. That's really all I want from my defensive lineman, really from everyone on the defense. But That's the thing, him talking about not only the pass rushing ability, but also his ability to defend the run, which is, equally as important for a defensive end, right? Because you have to have guys who can defend the run. That's how you slow down every offense. So it's just nice to hear what Latu's competition was saying about him. And the more I hear people talk about Latu, the more excited I find myself getting. And it seems like we're only 4 practices in, right? Today's practice number 5. It seems like through, 4 practices, it seems like the Colts have found, at a minimum, a decent player with their first round pick who plays hard. Shane Steichen was asked about Latu yesterday. And usually, whenever coaches are asked questions like this, they talk a lot about the physical and things of that nature. That is not what Steichen discussed. Here's Shane Steichen on Latu.
I did, and you watch all these rushers in the draft, and they're all talented. But his motor that he had after plays, you could see it. You know what I mean? Even if he gets around the edge and the quarterback steps up, boom, he is turning and running and trying to go get him. And that's what really stood out to me about him was his relentless effort.
Relentless effort. It's an important thing. That's an important thing. Okay, because there's plenty of guys in the world who are extremely talented but don't play with effort, and because of that, they don't succeed. I don't know about you, but I want guys on my team to play hard every play. And it seems like that's what Latu is. He's that kind of a player. And it also makes a lot of sense. If you hear Latu speak at all, this dude is clearly filled with passion for playing football. It clearly brings him joy. And everything that Shane Steichen said right there, I think, reflects that. And look, if he plays hard all year, and if he's as talented as Bernard Raymond is saying that he is in that prior clip, then I don't know how he doesn't have a solid rookie season. Now, when I say solid rookie season, the key word there is rookie, because rookie edge rushers usually aren't that great. I don't think Latu is going to have a double-digit sack year after going back and looking at rookie seasons from edge rushers. Right? Double-digit sacks for a rookie is a lot. There is an adjustment period for young rushers in the NFL, and Chris Ballard hit on that recently when he went on Chris Long's podcast.
And this as much as anybody, it's hard for young rushers in this league. They're not used to the techniques and the talent that they're about to deal with on the offensive line that they had. It's nothing against what the kids playing in college, but these are grown men playing tackle and guard and center in our league that have been well schooled and trained. And there's a little bit of an adjustment period. But to Latu's credit, and it'll be interesting to see over the next month, how he continues to develop. He is an option rusher, and he is extremely instinctive and athletic. He does some freaky things just with no pads on. So we're excited to add him to the group and think we have a really, really good defensive line group to throw at people this year.
That was Chris Ballard talking about Latu and just expectations for the season. And he's exactly right. Every young pass rusher has it takes them a while to adjust to playing in the NFL, like it does for quarterbacks. It takes them time to adjust, offensive linemen, everyone. But edge rushers especially, it takes them a bit to adjust to the NFL game. For context, Will Anderson Jr. of the Houston Texans, he won Defensive Rookie of the Year last year. And he didn't play that well. He had 7 sacks. That's it. And he was the 3rd overall pick. Drafted, 12 spots in front of Latu. 7 sacks won him Defensive Rookie of the Year last year. It's not very good. That doesn't sound overwhelmingly great, right? But here's the thing. When it comes to these guys, rookie pass rushers just don't always play at an elite 11, 12, 13 sack level. It takes them time to adjust to playing against grown men that have been playing offensive tackle in the NFL for 6, 7, 8 years or whatever. It's very different than playing against, a 19-year-old freshman from Iowa. Just is. So, look, if Latu gets to 7 sacks this year, I'm going to call that a successful year for him. Because that's what Will Anderson had last year. And he won Defensive Rookie of the Year. So, excited about Latu. All the conversation around him has been great. I just think that we need to have proper expectations for a rookie edge rusher. Now, the Colts are deep at the defensive line, and that is all thanks to Chris Ballard and his philosophy on how to build a team. I know people don't agree with everything that he does, but hey, he's at least gotten this part of it right, where this Samson Ebukam injury hasn't set the Colts way far back, right? There's like the roster really hasn't changed that much. A few guys are going to get a few extra reps. It's not the end of the world, but look, you can have the best defensive line in the league. You can have the best offensive line in the league. You can have the best everything, but if your quarterback sucks, you aren't going to win very many games. You aren't. So because of that, Chris Long, of course, had to ask Chris Ballard on his podcast about Anthony Richardson and why they selected him and all these things. And I've got that audio for you when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Hey, tired of joint pain and looking for an alternative?
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket rolls on. Chris Ballard revealed a large part of why they took Anthony Richardson, also dropped a pretty interesting comparison as to who Anthony Richardson reminds him of. He did this on Chris Long's The Green Light podcast. Fascinating stuff. Here is the clip of Chris Ballard explaining why they took Anthony Richardson.
Well, okay, so a couple of things. One, I did think about your brother a lot, you know, when we did that, because I'd been a part of that. So, taking much different, taking an offensive lineman than a quarterback, with the limited amount of experience. But then when I have a head coach, Shane Steichen, who is outstanding in terms of his understanding what the position needs and can do and how to fit the offense around it, and then his history of doing it, from Phillip Rivers to Justin Herbert to Jalen Hurts, to watch the just fundamental changes that offensively he was able to make the quarterback successful, really helped me understand, okay, this is the vision you've got to have a vision for the player and what he, how we're going to use him and how he's going to fit within the offense and the scheme. And I thought Shane had a tremendous vision. Now, he did not have the same production as a lot of quarterbacks have, but the flashes were loud and they were really strong. I kept watching, and he's probably a little different, but he reminded me a little of Steve McNair when he was coming out of Alcorn. Now, I was coaching still at the time, but and McNair broke every record and had every, small school record for a quarterback. But just their play style, I thought, was very similar.
That was Chris Ballard talking about why they selected Anthony Richardson, and he threw in a little comparison there at the end, comparing the one and only Anthony Richardson to Steve McNair, which is pretty interesting. Steve McNair, I remember him when he was just older, right? Being, living in Murfreesboro. They're both big, large, mobile quarterbacks. Steve McNair a little bit smaller, even though he's 6'2", 230. Jeez. He had some great years in Nashville, playing for the Titans, all those fun things. Co-MVP 2003, probably the best year of his career, right? The other thing that I found interesting there was I felt like Chris Ballard's answer as to why they took Anthony Richardson was less about Anthony Richardson and more about Shane Steichen's ability to coach. He brought up Shane Steichen's resume and the success that he's had everywhere that he's been. He brings up Phillip Rivers, which is like, I feel like Phillip Rivers was great before Shane Steichen showed up, but hey, whatever. And then, Phillip Rivers obviously leaves, comes to Indianapolis, plays here for a year, does decently well. They make the playoffs and all those fun things. And Steichen gets the opportunity to coach Justin Herbert's rookie season. And Justin Herbert had an incredible rookie season. Okay. And then he leaves, the Chargers to go to Philadelphia. And Nick Sirianni's like, hey, man, I need a new offensive coordinator. You want to come up here and coach? And Shane Steichen's like, yeah, I would love to do that. So he ends up in Philadelphia to help with the Jalen Hurts ascension, because that's what it was. Jalen Hurts had been a backup. I believe he had started the 1 year prior to Shane Steichen showing up. And then Steichen shows up, leads to Jalen Hurts being an MVP candidate. And then he ends up here in Indianapolis last year. And things were, not great, not ideal, right? He talks to Ballard, convinces him to take Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson only plays 12 quarters. And he's like, okay, I have Gardner Minshew. And he's able to create this functional, not great, functional offense, 11th in scoring last year and 13th in offensive DVOA with Gardner Minshew at the help. For full context there, Gardner Minshew is going to be the backup to Aiden O'Connell in Las Vegas. Come on now. And yet, Shane Steichen was able to figure out a way for the Colts to have a chance at winning the division. Okay, we're a Gardner Minshew accurate swing pass away from doing so. Okay, like this dude, Shane Steichen, he can really, really coach. And as I was listening to it, I was like, that's a little crazy. Why are you taking a quarterback based off of a coach who's never been a head coach in the NFL before? But it's like, hey, I don't know, man. Like, why hire the guy if you don't trust him? I hope it works out. And I think it will. Like, I don't think that the question surrounding Anthony Richardson is, can he play? I think the question surrounding Anthony Richardson is, can he stay healthy? You know, I think that if he's available and he plays 17 games, like this Colts team's going to have a legitimate chance to win 10, 11 games. If they do that, they'll probably make the playoffs and potentially win the division. So I'm excited. I'm excited for this offense. I am on the record, big time Shane Steichen fan. Okay. Like, I think he's the 10th best coach in the NFL. Definitely has an opportunity to, you know, take a step up in that department if the Colts win the division this year. Okay, I think he's the best coach in the AFC South, just based off of, you know, what he did last year. Okay, like this guy can coach. If Anthony Richardson could just stay healthy, I have faith in Shane Steichen to get Anthony Richardson to where he needs to be for this Colts to be legitimately good, you know, because we can talk about the Colts not living up to expectations and not winning the division and not doing all these things, but it's hard to do so if you don't have a good quarterback. All right, and part of that is Chris Ballard's fault because he kept bringing in these new guys year in and year out. But at the same time, like if you're picking 15th, 17th, 21st in the draft, you're like, you can't draft a great quarterback at those spots. It's incredibly difficult to do so. And it's not like NFL teams are letting good quarterbacks leave their buildings. They aren't. They're giving them tons and tons of money. As we just saw the Dolphins make Tua Tagovailoa, you know, like the 5th highest paid quarterback in the NFL. And he's above average. He's not even great. So I'm trying to show a little bit of grace towards Chris Ballard because I do think that he's had a tough job. And look, like it's tough to find franchise quarterbacks. I hope Anthony Richardson's the guy. If he's not, and the Colts are bad this year, draft the next one. Let's keep it moving because that's what you have to win in this league. You have to have one of the best quarterbacks in the league, especially when you're in the AFC. And you got to face Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes every year in the playoffs. Yeah, that's an absolute gauntlet of dudes that can sling it. So that's going to do it for the Real Jonathan Smith Show, the Dan Dockett Show, coming your way here in about 5 minutes. I'm sure he's got thoughts on everything going on. I believe Kent Sterling's joining us to talk a little bit about what's going on at Colts camp. So that'll be good. The Dan Dockett Show coming your way here in about 5 minutes. Thanks for tuning in to the Real Jonathan Smith Show. I'll be back again tomorrow from 10 to noon.